There you go. Okay, it looks like we're live. So welcome everyone. This is the Wednesday, June 18th meeting of the Dunn County Planning Resource and Development Committee. Looks like at this point in time, only Supervisor Bjork is not attending at the present. He may be a little bit late, but we do have a quorum, so we'll proceed with the meeting. Approval of the minutes from the June 4th meeting. Do I have a motion? Was there Morehouse? Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye. Opposed, say no. Minutes are approved. Do we have any general public comments not related to or any general public comments? Okay. Nothing came in the mail? Okay. So we have today's agenda starts with a public hearing on a request for a rezone. Again, we have a quorum. We're missing one of our 5 members at this point, but we do have 4 committee members here, so we have a quorum. This is to discuss a rezone request as identified on the agenda. Just by way of background, just to remind people, the hearing is the only opportunity to speak publicly about this issue. Only one person at a time will speak. And we ask everyone who does testify to state their name and address before speaking. Could I ask staff to give a confirmation of the open meeting, public meeting notice?
Yes, good morning. The public hearing for this was advertised in the Colfax Messenger for June 4th and June 11th.
I'm going to switch this a little bit. Let's start with the staff report on the recommendation for the rezone.
Certainly, good morning. This rezoning is in the town of Grant, our intensive agriculture zoning district. The applicants are Hunter and Ashley Chopik, Section 32, Town of Grant. Their parcel is currently 13.41 acres, and they're wishing to zone from that intensive agriculture to the general agriculture district. Included in today's packet is the staff report, the rezoning application, and the town recommendation. This is just an overview of the county, kind of giving a point of reference. Where basically we are going to get this zoomed out. I apologize. The parcel is actually right on the township line. So we have the town of Grant to the north and the town of Colfax to the south. The Chopiks currently live in the town of Colfax, which is zoned general agriculture. So having this additional parcel to the north as intensive agriculture, it was an learning experience to understand the difference with farmland preservation zoning involved. The parcel of interest lot 1 was actually created in 2001. Interestingly enough, there was a restriction recorded on that CSM that said that no changing zoning and no buildings would be permitted on that with no additional information. So if approved, there would be an affidavit correction that would be able to remove that restriction on that CSM, allowing this to be a buildable lot. A part of the rezoning criteria, we look at our comprehensive plan, the town of Grant's comprehensive plan, and our farmland preservation zoning district to understand, the acceptability of this use being converted to more general agriculture. Overall, as long as it stays in general agriculture, there's no farmland preservation credits that have ever been claimed on this parcel. Staff found that this is a good candidate, along with the town of Grant, to allow for this rezoning to occur. The site, given a series of different photos here, really covering the slopes of the site property. I mean, there's really, it's several steep slopes initially coming in there, and really just a flat field up above that has actually buildable area, or I should say productive cropland. Even so, it's only designated as a farm, the soils are designated as farmland of statewide importance. So they're not really classified as that class 1 productive soils. So again, over 50% of the soils, which we utilize that information to determine suitability, are actually designated as non-prime farmland. So again, I did put in here just what is farmland of statewide importance, which really is hitting into those class 2, class 3, class 4 soils, classified by the USDA. Here's the proposed site plan provided by the applicants with the driveway coming in, very small buildable site. They overall plan to remain in wooded. They like to really have some open fields, maintain as a substance or, a sustaining agriculture production for themselves. Again, consistency, this was summarized in the packet. Overall, staff found that the non-tilled cropland will be maintained and forage hay production, and the areas of steep slopes limit the suitability for intensive agriculture uses. The proposed rezone would accommodate a single-family rural residence, which is compatible with the surrounding landscape and would occupy only a small portion of the parcel. The town of Grant reviewed this request April 30th and recommended approval. Again, summarized in the packet, just outlines statute requirements, ordinance requirements related to determining suitability for the rezone to general agriculture, which is still consistent with an agricultural use. Again, that's the application. So I don't know if the committee has any questions at this point.
Any questions from the committee at this point? Okay. Sorry about the crowd noise. They'll be leaving in a minute. That's all right. Yeah. So no questions. Do the applicants have any comments they would like to make at this point in time? They're okay with things. Anybody from the public here that would have any comments they would like to make at this point in time? Okay. If that's all, then I think we have enough information to make our decision, and I will close the public portion of the hearing. Okay, without objection, then to allow the applicants to go on with their lives would be without objection, I would ask to move the item 10A, the rezone request, up to this point in the agenda and discuss and take action on that. No objection. So we have the ordinance amendment rezone before us. Any could I have a motion, please?
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
So Morales moves. Is there a second? Mr. Bernier seconds. Any discussion? All right, we'll call the question then. All in favor of the rezone as described in the materials for the meeting and justification provided to us, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And the rezone is approved. Thank you very much for coming today, guys. And then again, without without uh, objection, we have a request, number 9A, request to repurchase property taken through interim foreclosure to allow staff to get on with their other work. I'd ask to move that up to this point in time. And without objection, I'll do that. So Barbara, will you give us your report?
Hi, thank you. Dunn County took foreclosure through the in-rem proceedings in December of 2024 of this parcel located just outside of Ridgeland address. Dunn County has spoken with the property owners. We were prepared to bring an eviction action. The property owners have come forward requesting to repurchase. I will remind the committee of the law change, which gives preference, kind of arguably a mandate to allow the repurchase. Though I would argue that it's still in the discretion of the committee. If there was grounds to find not to allow, the request to repurchase is the values of the property as of May 30th, 2025, May 31st, 2025, were $18,477.83. I asked the treasurer wasn't prepared, or the Corporation Counsel's office wasn't prepared to present because the treasurer was at a committee last week. The numbers as of July 1st to the committee, though about $196 accrues additionally every month. So I can provide that information to the committee. To give some background, I know that in speaking with the former property owners, Don and Anna Patterman is present today in the back. Don Patterman is active military. They do have circumstances that they believe that brought them to this situation, though they're not proud of. And so the request is to repurchase the property in the amount of $18,673.83.
Thank you, Barbara. Any questions from the committee?
So the number you just gave us was different than the one in the packet?
That was the number in the packet, $18,673.83. I don't have a number that includes July, though, strike that, $18,477.83. Thank you.
Yeah, it's true. Barbara, there's another amount though listed in the packet, the sale price, 18,977.83.
With the administrative fee of $500. That's,
Got it.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I forgot that.
So our approval is of the amount that you indicated today, which includes all of those.
$18,977.83 would include the $500 administrative fee, which is in our ordinance.
Are we, any other questions?
I'm just curious about the time frame. If someone like this or in the past says, I'd like to repurchase it, is there a limited time when they're allowed to do that? How's that work?
Prior to the law change, the circumstances would be the committee's discretion. And in the past, as something becomes, as we're longer away from the foreclosure, less generosity has been exhibited by the committee. With the law change, there's this strong preference that it goes to the committee. This is the last property that people are living on. And so we had brought an eviction action or strike that. We had started the process of drawing up the paperwork for an eviction action, and had told the property owners that an eviction action would be imminent. I had reached out to them and then by telephone because I hadn't heard from them, and so they requested. So we were moving in the direction of no recourse for them by way of eviction. There isn't a line in the sand that I could provide you as far as that's the drop dead date. It's basically until the property is resold, which you can't do if somebody's living on the property.
Okay, I guess my question was, the owners would like to purchase it. How long do they have to come up with the money?
Oh, that's your question. Sorry,
I
thank you
didn't-
for
I Didn't do
rephrasing
it
it.
well.
No, that could be determined by the committee. I would suggest July 14th.
Or how would you
Well-
best feel with your discretion?
Oh, that seems reasonable as well. 30 days.
Any other questions? Like, I mean, my thoughts are that this is a positive outcome for the family and the community. I support it. Any other comments before we? So we have did I ask for a motion on this?
Not yet.
Not yet. Could I have a motion to accept the recommendation, council?
I'll make that.
Monica?
I'll second it.
Second. Motion's been made and second to accept the recommendation of council with the provision that the timelines are at the council's discretion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. And the request is approved. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience, Supervisor Kinnear. On that.
He wasn't very clear.
No, he wasn't.
Maybe by
Uh,
9:30.
Maybe he needs our coffee.
Called that one too quickly. Let's see. So you're back then, I think, to number 7, which is staff reports. Okay, Register of Deeds monthly report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In May, we saw more marriages being filed. Wedding season is kicking off, I guess. And then also we are seeing more recordings. So we had 146 ownership transfers. So that, not all ownership transfers, a fee is required to be paid. So there are exemptions that can apply. So the total value in real estate sales was 26 million. Yeah, 523 documents recorded. So that real estate is definitely picking up. And then in May, I also testified in support of the transfer fee bill at the Assembly Committee on Housing and Real Estate in Madison. That was my first time testifying. And at this point, I don't know that transfer fee bill will be moving forward. It would be quite a hit to the state revenue, so I don't know that that's going to be moving on, especially what I'm hearing is they feel with the uncertainty and maybe some federal funding that they wouldn't be able to make that was definitely changing the split, so the county would have seen more money in the funds from transfer fees. So, but yeah, it was still a good experience. So that's all I have.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I was just curious about the researchers from Upper Michigan.
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of researchers in as much anymore because they can access the records online. But
Okay.
those companies that don't pay for the subscriptions, then they'll reach out, kind of give us a heads up, hey, we're coming to the office. So they were there for a week, So they're in the morning and they're there all day. And
Oh,
so yeah, it was 2 people. So it's just, it's just added, you're kind of monitoring,
Yeah.
what they're looking at through the records. I guess I can't say we're monitoring what they're doing, but it's just, yeah, there's a presence in our office that we're not used to every day anymore. And, yeah, and then lots of requests for copies and even, vital records that they needed to do some research to make sure life estates had been terminated. So they were requesting death records, and I believe it was for some type of an energy project, so that they were
Huh.
contracted through this particular company. So,
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
yeah, yep.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my report is up here on the screen. During the month of May, 9 certified survey maps came in for review. You can see where those maps were located, the different various townships, a number of parcels created, the acreage. Town of Dunn led the way with 8 new parcels, 102 acres. So 17 maps of survey came in for review and filing. We worked on remonumentation work in quite a few different townships, and just mainly business as usual. So I don't have anything to add unless there's any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thanks. Thanks.
And in our packet, busy month, as expected, with zoning permits. The month of May looked really good for 8 new single-family dwelling permits being submitted. I keep using my mouse, I apologize, and realize it's over here. Again, the phone calls, very thankful for our staff who were able to funnel, and keep track, but we had over 199 phone calls, 109 just through our program assistant, or 104, excuse me. In May, we didn't have any ADUs. As far as Board of Adjustment goes, we had that conditional use permit for a non-farm in the town of Wilson that went to the board. And then just on Monday, we had another conditional use for a non-farm parcel, town of Wilson, and a variance for a livestock structure. July is the organization meeting for the Board of Adjustments. There's no hearing scheduled, but they will be meeting to discuss activities for the next year. Code enforcement, we had 3 new cases in May. Again, the gamut of, multiple chickens, home automotive repair, and fence on a property line is just example of what came through. You see how I tried to like move over that quick?
Yeah, you almost did.
It's in a platted subdivision where there's, smaller lots, and the individual this property owner has a chicken coop. However, during staff observation, there's probably a couple dozen chickens that are running free and onto neighbor's property. So it's zoned R1. And jumping ahead, and it's unfortunate Supervisor Bjork is not here, so we could talk about the town surveys. I know it was asked last month. Here's the
They didn't
result
do
of the
it.
towns that have not submitted. I did hear from New Haven and the town of Rock Creek, 2 unzoned townships who have reached out and are committed to submitting the survey results, or completing their survey and submitting it to us. We had our first focus group meeting for the agriculture and working lands on June 10th. We had a really good turnout for that meeting. Upcoming will be the survey being mailed out to those farmers or agriculture property owners, 30 acres or more. That will be forthcoming, and we'll be looking at that focus group meeting again end of July, early August. And I'll be setting up the focus group meetings for the other topics here in the next week or so. And I'm excited to say that, yes, our recruitment has been successful for 2 positions, and those hires will be starting June 30th. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Nice.
Morning, everyone. My report's in the packet, just to highlight a couple things regarding conservation compliance and implementation of our ag performance standards. At the last committee meeting, and we'll be going to county board tonight, is that budget adjustment request for the notice of discharge grant. We also submitted another grant around the same time, a targeted runoff management grant for a different farm. We're waiting for the results to come back, whether we were awarded that. We did receive some ranking criteria yesterday. We ranked number 2 in the category that this particular application is in. However, a large portion of the funding that supports these types of grants in the state is considered federal 319 money. And there's a lot of uncertainty right now whether the 2026 federal budget will include any 319 money. So should that be the case where there is no funding for that, then certainly our targeted runoff management grant will be impacted. There is state funding that does support some of these activities as well, but that needs to be distributed out over all the applicants. So I believe there's around 15 to 20 different projects that have been ranked and scored. We would likely not be in the top 5 of that ranking and scoring based on need. So, time will tell, but the future doesn't look that promising for some of these funding sources. On I guess a better note, we've got some activities happening with our producer-led watershed groups. I've included a flyer in this packet for some events that are coming up. We do have a Nature Conservancy grant that's helping support grazing and getting pasture or rotational grazing set up for some farms. So that's exciting. And then we've had a pretty busy spring right now with a number of construction projects getting on the ground already. We pretty much beat a lot of the rain that's been happening the last couple of weeks. So, but things are moving along. And I did include the Clean Sweep program in my report. There's some more information that it's kind of being discussed right now. So, but at this point in time, I've kind of worked on it a little bit to pick up that gap for that. So we're looking at the logistics right now and making sure we can get that set up. There has been a date that's been set at the end of September, but we'll need to work through all the other details at this point in time. So be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you, Chase. I'm curious about the well closings. How does that get brought to your attention, and then what's the process?
Sure. So we have, it's the same funding source that we use for a lot of our other projects. So it's bond money, that's state funds. They usually get brought to our attention through word of mouth or plumbers or well drillers that see one. Maybe they're drilling a new well for a property and they need to abandon the old one. Then that typically comes back to us for some assistance in funding and support of that. There's also a number that we discover when we're out on farms or site visits working with landowners, and we discover an old windmill, but stuff back in the woods that has a well under it. We will obviously want to get those closed. It's a direct conduit to groundwater. We do provide up to 70% cost share on a lot of these that come to our attention. But really in order to do that and to be, I guess, supportive of tax dollars, we do a design and make sure that they follow certain standards. But really it comes down to the well driller, the plumber, and their license and properly filling and sealing that well. And then they also fill out the paperwork that certifies that it's been properly abandoned. That's turned into the state and the records kept of it. One interesting one that we've still have yet to close, but is an old pit or dug well. And it was on the news last year when the family's pet fell into it, and the fire department had to get called out there. So we're assisting in getting that properly closed up for one, obviously groundwater concerns, but clearly safety is that could have been much worse. The dog did survive, by the way. So
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I have one, Chase. If there is not, if it's not funding for these larger mediation projects, what happens at that point in time? Do they continue to do the best we can, but,
Yeah, I think, it's somewhat yet to be determined, but I think the way, you know, NR 151, the ag performance standards in the state have been in existence for 23 years, and there's never been enough funding for it. So what the result is that, you know, sites that might need some help to get into compliance to reduce a pollution or runoff issue continue to do that. Clearly, I think, and we've talked about this before, having presence of our office and our partners, our partner agency, NRCS, working with that landowner to make steps towards some improvement is better than nothing. But ultimately, to act on the rules that are in place, both at the state and what we've adopted into our county ordinance, in many instances, we are required to offer cost share. So it might, if the funding isn't there, it may take cause for us to take a closer look at what we need to offer cost share for and kind of split things out a little bit more. Certainly, if we can get assistance, I mean, I mentioned at last meeting, these projects are quite expensive, and landowners just aren't in a position to cover those costs. So the cost share is needed more than just a requirement. It really just doesn't happen. So unfortunately, yeah, we may be in a situation where we are going to just try to use our relationship and you know, community building skills and try to move some projects in a positive direction. But that's been kind of the Achilles heel of the program for 23 years. So
have you talked about this at the Land and Water Conservation Board?
yeah.
Any thoughts from that group?
So right now, it's actually almost live, I would say, the conversation. There'll be an executive committee meeting coming up next week that has an agenda item to talk about an NR 151 gap analysis, and actually Wisconsin Land and Water Association stepping in and contracting with an individual to look at the history of the program, and it is a state DNR program, and evaluate counties that are tracking their compliance documentation. So some counties have a very robust farmland preservation program and a very robust parcel tracking system that they can better understand how many parcels are in compliance across the county. We aren't one of those. We have a handle on it, but we don't have a system that we can go to any parcel and say, in a click of a button to say whether they're in full compliance or not. We'd have to do a lot of digging through files. But with that said, the intent of the project, I believe, is to try to understand after 23 years, what has gotten us to the situation we're in, and what would it take for us to see full compliance. And, you know, the really intent when the rule was adopted was, you know, once in compliance, always in compliance, therefore cost share doesn't have to be offered again, with the grandiose idea that you would never need tax funding or cost share funds to do this type of work anymore. But we are not even close to that. Yeah, right.
I was thinking about, yeah, so it seems like we need some new thinking for sure. Okay. Any other questions to Chase? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Staff, as always,
Yeah.
terrific reports. We have nothing under 8. Handled 9. Handled 10. We're gonna go back up to 7C, Comprehensive Planning Community Survey Review Comments. Tammy shared a small document with us. It's easy to read. And we're gonna go through every line of that today. Please.
Yes, I
share
brought
your thoughts.
snacks and we're gonna stay here for a couple hours
Yeah.
and go through.
Sure.
I just felt it would be important to share it with the committee, to take the time to digest it when you have, are available or able to or interested. I did take a little bit of time to summarize some key areas that I felt were reoccurring themes. And I can just dive into that, or otherwise,
Why don't you go ahead?
okay. And then feel free to, we can, stop at each one, but I would say probably the number one topic that came up was the road conditions and maintenance. And, across the county, whether it was urban or rural. And as I broke out the comments by, from the city of Menominee to the rural residents, it was consistent, right? It was just as much about what was going on in the city of Menominee as it was in the rural areas. So probably not too surprising to see this information or this theme come out. Second theme that I observed was the broadband access. Many residents, feel that they do not have broadband access, or the coverage maps, would suggest otherwise. So, what I try to do is kind of tease out some comments and just share them with the committee. Again, the broadband maps say they have it, but they don't feel they do. And again, the pricing is also a concern. Topic 3, garbage and recycling services. Again, this seemed to be both within the city of Menominee and our rural areas, with this theme of concerns of price, and definitely those missing the transfer station and the services that were offered, previously. I did try to remove, again, some names or references to certain companies in this document to my reference. Another topic was mental health. And, some good comments. I thought, just again, awareness, right? Our community connections and thinking about how comprehensive planning, how we lay our land use out and create community connections are important to mental health. Again, directly, influencing those services, just like the roads and everything, comprehensive planning can't necessarily, influence how those services are funded, but again, try to identify priorities. Another theme, public transportation, and, as far as like access to the rural areas, our transit team is working on addressing that. So I think that's, some also outreach from this, right? To explain the services that are available would be also important. Again, kind of that transit service from, to and from Eau Claire to our Twin Cities. There's that high rail theme that still reoccurs. Affordable housing. Surprisingly, I thought there would have been more of a theme with affordable housing, and it didn't really come out that strong. But again, the senior housing is very difficult to find. Costs are high. I mean, that's, I think, very well known by this committee. Desire. So moving on to number 7, the desire for more recreation access and community spaces. I thought there was value to sharing this as far as the request to update the parks. What do our trails look like? How do we make more connections? I think that's really a key thing, is making, connecting our communities, our areas, so that things are accessible. Theme 8, environmental quality and water protection. Recognizing that we have a large, beautiful lake and river, and the usability and how we recreate in that water body or those water bodies can be challenging. Education and civic expectations. There was just a touch on improving again, with the theme of City of Menominee being weighted heavy as far as, response. Of course, that theme came out, or one school district over, comparison to the others. Again, aging, population accessibility, again, getting access for our elderly, and getting affordable care to them. So part of my goal was sharing the survey results, and granted, we really only had 538 participants. And how do we determine that sixth focus group topic? Was there a theme that really, stuck out that we need to make sure we're, covering as we do more data collection and research through this project?
Well, how, can we just discuss a little bit about what Tammy talked about? Yeah, yeah. You gave us an assignment last time, I remember, so I did go over some of these and what you said and what I looked at overlap quite a bit. I noticed, it's interesting how many people skipped questions sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't understand. In fact, one of them, there were 504 that skipped it. And one question, and I don't understand, is there some, do you know why?
I don't, but
Okay.
I will dig into that
No,
one.
no, that's fine.
Well,
It's just,
it's a good question, though.
but it curious, because it kind of skews things maybe a little bit. The other part I just want to comment on is some of these questions are hard to answer unless you have the knowledge to answer them. And I thought overall, a lot of the majority of the people did a good job. They seemed to know what they're talking about and they had some knowledge to answer the questions intelligently. And some people that didn't have it, it may be our fault or whatever that we haven't informed them that, yes, we already have that, or we're working on that, or this or that. But I liked your summary. It was real good. And I just want to throw those thoughts out as far as the people. And one more thing is themes that I saw, the rural environment, rural lifestyle, natural beauty, the small farm stuff, and then family and friends. Those are all things that keep people here. And that one wasn't surprising at all, right?
Correct.
So thank you. That's it. Some comments.
And I can address, I looked up the 504, the skipped question, and the question was, what is your relationship to Dunn County? So interestingly, that's the one that most didn't want to respond to, which would have seemed like a kind of a straightforward question. So what, I mean, I don't know if it necessarily carries much weight, but.
Was that fill in the blanks or was that?
Nope,
No,
it was, there
no,
were several
that's fourth
options.
choice.
Yep. I own agricultural land, I own residential property, I own vacation property, I work in Dunn County.
That was good.
Yep.
504. Was it on the backside of a page or something?
Well, it's question 6, so, Even- yep.
Yeah, that's Monica.
I guess to start talking about that question about focus groups and where the gaps are. So looking at these themes and what's not being addressed, I see like a core of issues around transportation, right? Public transit, roads, and then accessibility. So I don't know if that would be a good topic for another focus group. That's what jumps out to me.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Roads.
It's my fault, but yes,
I am
my mind wandered, I apologize.
Yeah, okay. So Tammy gave us a bunch of themes that came up in comments. And so I'm looking at those themes and thinking about what is not being addressed in the focus groups. And I'm wondering about perhaps including a focus group on transit, roads, and in general issues related to accessibility.
I mean, obviously, want us to do more focus on housing. I was sort of startled at the small proportion of renters responding to the survey. I mean, it's less than 4%. And so these concerns of homeowners about maintenance and other kinds of things took precedence. And so I mean, Grow has obviously just done some really excellent work on largely on rental properties, but yeah, I mean, I think we need to sort of focus in on the various options for housing and what people are looking for. I mean, 90% of the respondents own their own home. So,
Yeah, to me, it's sort of, it points out, and this probably points out in some ways the limitations of a survey in terms of one,
yeah,
reaching people, and two, actually getting, meaningful impact. And it probably points to the importance of us doing a good job in the focus group discussions, which is where the real discussion can happen. Um,
yeah, and just to follow up, I mean, what one hears and what we learned in the housing study is that people are looking for various types of housing, twin homes, duplexes, senior housing, and so on. We don't, the respondents here didn't tell us anything that we need to use. And I think going forward, that's really important.
And of course, I think surveys it's clear from the survey that it's easier to identify negative things and problems
Yeah,
than
sure.
it is to, I mean, some people did point out things, we really need to do this for positive reasons, but usually it was, we have something going wrong, and why is it going wrong? But I was a little surprised that the broadband, the perception of
I
broadband
know.
access was as poor as it
I know,
was.
that's really weird.
And that may be, Dan may have thoughts about that, but it may be that we're still reaching people. I don't know, do you have any thoughts about that? Share those with us.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't speak specifically for the people that responded, but a lot of those maps, what they cover is areas that have been allocated funding in order to provide broadband. That does not mean that those projects are done. And I think one of the bigger areas that I know isn't done yet is the town of Tiffany and New Haven, which is those two towns, pretty much the entire town. Is unserved, but there's a project that has been provided with state funding in order to do that. That isn't yet complete. And the county actually provided some funding to that project as well. So there's that one. And then there's another area in Colfax or over by Whitetail Golf Course that receives some USDA money to do a broadband project. I doubt that that's underway. There's usually a few hoops to jump through for federal government money. And then we know an area around Wheeler that we're hoping to get something done through the BEAD project, but BEAD has run into a stumbling block. So there's some new rules around how that funding is going to be allocated. So the state was almost done with their grant round, and then they had to stop and rescind their awards and has to go through the whole process all over again. So that just happened this week. So yeah.
Would you say in maybe 2 years that people will be covered in Dunn County?
Um, Funny as this came up, I just emailed the the provider to see if he could give me an update. That was the initial intent. So they had run into some struggles about just essentially finding people to do the work. I don't think it was a funding issue. I think it was a having people to do that issue. So I asked them for an update. I know they had extended their deadline through part of the grant process as they weren't going to meet their initial deadline. They had to request to extend, and that extension was granted. So I know that is going to take a little bit longer, but I guess on the positive side of the BEAD slowdown, there may be crews available to do that work now, because I think everybody was thinking like this year or next year, all of a sudden we were going to get hit with a whole lot of money, and that's going to get slowed down. So there's crews that were, I think, ramping up to do work that are, but that's pure my speculation.
Okay, so it seems like this isn't something we'd want to be working on as a focus group, as this is something that's already being done. It's just more of an education type thing.
Yeah.
It seems like some of these things are more of an education type thing.
Mhm.
Okay.
Though in a way, it's sort of like the kind of issue that probably, I don't think it came up in the comprehensive plan, but the county made a decision to act in planning another, to dedicate a significant amount of planning and policy work towards this issue. And it's really reaped real benefits to
Yeah.
us. And so as we think about the comprehensive plan process, it seems to me like one of the things we want to identify is, are there other issues that are of concern that would benefit from a similar kind of attention or process? And one that comes to mind, and maybe you can talk about this, is the effort that you've been undertaking, and again, not identified, I don't think, in any comprehensive plan, but to provide some kind of collaborative services on fire and emergency care, and bringing people together to look for solutions, collaborative solutions that are probably that build on the strengths of our community rather than trying to overcome the weaknesses.
Yeah. And yeah, so that project is still underway. I actually just met with the consultant this week, Melissa and I did, to kind of talk about the county's current role in that system. So we're still waiting on the results of that. But yeah, I think that is one of those things that, as we talk about any of the financial struggles that counties or municipalities have, we're looking for creative ways to be able to solve some of those problems and provide those services. But I think that particular service, there's some, as we kind of talk about it, and even as we talk about the consultants, there's that question of, actually we brought it up, is there hasn't been, an important person hasn't experienced the issues that are happening right now. We know we have somewhere around like 90-minute response times in some of the towns in Dunn County. And so it's not a problem until you're that person that didn't get the 90-minute response, right? So when we talk about broadband, those people know they don't have broadband. The people that don't have the response times and think they do, they just don't know it yet. So part of that is the education, or unfortunately, it may end up being that we have to have an issue happen before people are really aware of that problem. So yeah, you're not going to see a lot of that in a survey like that because it hasn't been experienced. The towns and the providers are all well aware. It's the people that aren't. So.
Good point. So in a way, it deals with the whole issue of civic governance and how do we as a community organize ourselves so that we surface those kinds of issues and provide a space in which we can have constructive discussion to come up with like this is potentially a really positive solution that could solve the problem. It was also true, like how much frustration there was over, and this breaks my heart to say, but the whole solid waste disposal
Yeah.
thing and how we dropped the ball. I don't think the county necessarily dropped the ball, but we didn't stop the ball from hitting the ground, put it that way. And now we have
Right.
a mess.
Right.
It sounds like. I mean, maybe this isn't reflective, but I think it probably generally is reflective of where we're going with frustrations about it. And so that brings me to think that maybe one of the areas of focus discussion is how do we identify and begin sort of constructively planning around solving some of these problems. I mean, I thought the way the solid waste thing unfolded was chaotic, and we lost it because of the chaos in some ways. If we had been more prepared to sort of focus that discussion, we could have. I still to this day don't understand how we let that slip away from us, but
And we didn't do a good job of educating the towns when they're
no.
adamant opposition.
Right, and the other people were obviously doing that. And
Yeah.
it was not an unorganized effort to get rid of that program. But it looks like that probably may not have been the right decision. And it wasn't a carefully thought out decision. So we have to do it now, but at some point in time in this process, I think it might be worthwhile to think about how can we pull together a focus group that could think about, where are these points of collaboration, and how can we bring people together what's the role of the county in bringing people together to look for planning and development of long-term solutions that are maybe unique and not and can't be handled necessarily by the private sector or by government alone. Anyway. Mike.
Well, it was interesting. We were talking about the solid waste, and then you moved on to something deeper, which I was going to talk about solid waste, but I like what you just said as far as that. The solid waste one is something I wrote down. It's really surprised me because part of it surprised me. The part where they're complaining about the cost and the service is because they were used to a different vendor. As far as I know, the Colfax and all these other areas where people take their own have been working really well and much cheaper than what it was. So that kind of surprised me with that. Villages and towns that have taken over and
built on the infrastructure that was existing in many cases before.
Yeah. So that was a surprise. It's interesting to hear that, but not the cost. Because remember, people always have the choice of doing it themselves if they're able, or hiring it done and still paying, because you still have to pay the per capita. But anyway, interesting. A focus group to kind of see where we can.
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, we don't have to decide that today, I don't think, but maybe as we think through it, if we could think about that, what are, and Dan, you've had some experience now working with several different broadband task force and now this new task force, and just how would the county begin pulling people together to have some of those discussions? Who would that be? It may in some cases be I don't know what the next steps are. Well, it may be that it's just I mean, I was a little surprised that, and I don't know if it's a matter of, I got to look back at the survey, but whether we really got into any village. I mean, we are a county of small villages also, in addition to that, and it's really important part of, I think it's an important part of what people like about Wisconsin as opposed to Iowa, that we have there are a lot of, or South Dakota there. I mean, we have a lot of little towns, and they are increasingly struggling to be viable places for people to live. And people want to live in little towns. So is there some kind of a need to bring people together from those areas and say, okay, what can we do either individually or collaboratively to address some of these concerns? And I know our staff has a lot of time to do all this stuff.
Right.
So, so I'm not asking for a plan or anything, but just sort of throwing it out there is how can we as a committee and the staff think about those bigger questions, as Mike said, that generally aren't necessarily delved into on a comprehensive plan, but probably should be.
Kind of in what you're talking about and looking for one more focus group. the main themes, natural beauty, rural lifestyle, small town feeling. Is there a way that the county can promote that? Would that be a focus group saying, okay, here's what 80% of the people think is the most important. How do we make it happen? I don't know. It's a possibility.
And planning, regional planning may have some thoughts about that. They do a lot of workshops on what they call placemaking, which I
Yeah.
never exactly understood exactly, but I think, it's like identifying what makes a place special and trying to make sure that you support that. But I think we need to go a little more, we need to be more strategic than that, I think. Where are the key things that help us maintain and strengthen these things that we care about? And how can we as a county actually have an impact on them? Not just village by village, but, or I don't know, I'm not sure what I'm saying, I guess. But I would like to see us talk about it.
Yeah, one thing I think is important to remember, and I'm not criticizing, but this is the old survey researcher. So if 80% of the 1% that responded to the survey is overwhelmingly supportive of agriculture, rural life, et cetera, doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the population of Dunn County feels the same way. So I would really like to see us, I don't exactly know how this would work, but I would sort of like to see us do a focus group on ongoing economic development. Like what do people want to see? I mean, these data are pretty overwhelmingly ag related, but maybe there are some other alternatives that we just aren't hearing about. So
Well, I noticed in the agriculture, when you got down to the agriculture section, you got away from the large, big picture stuff, that there was a clear and strong preference for a kind of a diverse agriculture.
yeah,
And I know our and water conservation office has been very supportive of that in a lot of different ways. But, and some of that was, how do you identify methods of agriculture that are supportive of the local economy? So I think that could fit into what you're
I think so.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that you had that, but it's kind of like, for me, it's sort of the juxtaposition of ag, manufacturing, tech development, et cetera, et cetera. And methodologically, I don't exactly know how you can tease out those differences, but I think we should give it a try.
Something to be said, I mean, think about focus groups. And I know I want to ask Tammy to talk about a little bit about the one we just had, but that they can really, by bringing diverse people, but bringing people with similar concerns, but diverse backgrounds together to talk about important issues, you build important bridges between people and leaders within the community that can help make things happen. But other thoughts? I don't want to.
A clarification question. So these focus groups up here, these 5, we have those, they are happening, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Those were a framework that was established. We only have the agriculture and working lands one technically. That's the only one that's been officially organized and started. So in my opinion, the other ones are flexible. We haven't this is the committee's ability to make that direction on where we really want to focus that attention.
And would you have any thoughts on that? You suggest that I attend you'd be open to me attending the agriculture one. Turned out that I screwed up and didn't get to it. But you completed one. And how did that work? Did regional planning lead that? Did you lead it? How did you perform it?
They did. So regional planning did between Susan and Chris Straight, led that. I would say the last hour was really good discussion, and I appreciated the attention and the challenges of the participants on the survey data that was presented from like the ag census data, and questioning, right, the value of a question and what does one interpret from a definition to another. It was a key takeaway of agricultural lands versus cropland versus productive
Land and farms.
land and farms. So it was really good questions to look at the statistics. Are we really losing data? I mean, there was so I mean overall it was just very thoughtful participation, and you never have enough time.
Right.
I feel like I want all of our focus groups to almost create a video ahead of time of what comp plan is for 5 minutes, and then we dive into an issue. So how do we simplify the comp plan conversation of why, and then really dive into what we're trying to accomplish and learn, and some key takeaways. So yeah, I think the survey, I really look forward to that survey getting out there. And the Farm Bureau actually offered we're putting a coupon on there for free ice cream for anyone to participate, whoever fills out the survey. Again, we're not tracking it. It's just kind of on the honor system if they cut it out and bring it to the fair. So in exchange, maybe we'll get more participation or more attendance at the county fair this year. And I think it's about 1,000.
1,400 letters being sent out.
1,400 parcels, but then it's being narrowed down to, I think, about 1,000 that will get mailed out.
But then there's an online option too.
Yeah, correct. Yep. So everyone's getting a mailed survey, but there'll be the same QR code to actually complete it online, similar to what we offered for the other survey.
So this focus group was to help determine what the survey would be, is that correct?
Partially, I think just to even talk about background. What do we know about, this is what's happening for agriculture today in Dunn County? And just kind of capturing that initial dialogue. We didn't dive into anything of great detail, unfortunately, but I feel like once those results come back, that committee or that group will meet again to really focus on them. I have a hard time thinking we're going to get through one focus group per topic. It feels like,
See how it can be effective, how it can do what we want it to do if it's just one, which is a time consideration, I understand.
and maybe it's, since we do have staff and we're going to be bringing on 2 new additional staff in our planning and land use, that we have the consultant handle one focus group and staff handle, follow-up meetings. So we're just bound by what the consultant, offered for their services. We can certainly, I think, fill in some of those gaps as staff.
So, I mean, my thought is that these are really important. And that they're the kind of discussions that we don't know for sure how much discussion there's going to be on any one of these, but that what we do know is that we want there to be time for a good discussion. And so not sort of just making a pro forma, but actually, I think we as a committee are really would welcome a robust effort in here. And if it takes a little more time and draws things out a little bit, I'm okay with that. Okay, anything else anyone has? What's next, Tammy? What do you, and you're.
One
yeah.
quick, and why do we want a 6th focus group?
We don't. Again, that comes from the contract that was signed with the consultant offering these,
I think that's the form.
Okay.
Correct, yep.
You're Susan's kind of using their standard.
correct. Yep.
I was just thinking about that and what Tom just said about, let's take our time and do it right. Maybe we don't need one more. I don't know how that would work. Thank you.
Yeah. Then, not that it's insignificant or not important, because it's critical. but we have done a lot of work on water quality. So I don't know. I have some questions about the value of that. You know, people are gonna say clean up the lake. We're working on it. Slowly. So I don't know.
That's the water, right?
I just raised that as a question. Will we generate useful information? I'm looking at Chase and maybe I'm wrong, but will we generate useful information out of a group like that? And maybe we could use, call it group 2 to explore some other, or some issues in more depth. What do you think, Chase?
Well, what comes to mind for me right now is there's a simultaneous other planning effort that's getting underway with our land and water plan update. You know, we've been very fortunate that these two timelines are kind of overlapping to where we can utilize feedback through these surveys and focus
Sure.
groups to help inform the land and water plan. But, you know, we do have, it's a few years old now, but the groundwater ad hoc committee recommendations, right? We
Right.
have the livestock operations study group recommend, like, I think a lot of those same themes are gonna carry through as well as our existing land and water plan. We are required to have a citizen advisory group, meeting as part of the land and water plan process. And that's going to need to occur sometime in 2026, basically, before August of 26. So, there may be some opportunities there that we could, you know, overlap some of the discussion,
But
I
if
guess.
this would, you know, if this process would add significantly to your work in, you know, in the second level of planning, I'm perfectly fine.
I mean, my initial reaction is that, yeah, I was looking forward to the water focus group conversation just to see where it would land.
All right,
I
let's do
didn't
it.
necessarily,
Forgive
I
me.
didn't necessarily think about it though in the sense of like, what are people actually gonna say? Cause I do think we know what they're gonna say, but you know, I was just
think we
curious to
do- I
see
think
if
we do,
if
but-
the trend is, if the perception is different, I guess, but,
Well, it depends who comes to the table.
right.
And if you use it, I mean, I think what you just described, layer on top of that, the Red Cedar partnership discussions, which are
That's
all
being
about
updated.
Blue Lake and the river,
Yeah,
and are in depth and have been going on now for 10 years or more. It feels like this discussion, I don't know, I sort of agree with Diana, it might be
redundant.
better use of time to
Yeah,
find something else. How do you want to do that, Tammy? I mean, do we need to define these better, or are you okay with it leaving it like it is right now, for now? And us thinking about it a little bit more, or?
That's certainly fine. I feel like I really benefited from this conversation, and I can even kind of run with the framework of different ideas to meeting with staff, and also present that and share that out with the committee for further direction. But I feel like there was very valuable, you know, everyone brought some great points up. And I always think about that end game, right? What does this document look like in the end? And one thing that I've appreciated in the past with comp plans is the value of supporting a project, the policy side of it, and how do we get there? And it's getting the grants. If I have a comp plan, a land and water plan, an outdoor rec plan that says we support this, we can write grants and we can get the funding in there. So it's really, you know, thinking about it. So as far as water goes, it's not just quality, it's quantity. And so, you know, we have a major effort, attention now with Wisconsin Geological Natural History Survey doing work in the Old Galley area. Well, that might be an important thing to cover if that's a priority for Dunn County, is do we want to try to lobby and make more effort to get groundwater data throughout the,
Can we include, I mean, we can include all of the stuff that happens in these other areas can be included as references and documents within the comprehensive plan, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, this comp plan is going to be 100 pages or less.
Well, it should be.
It should be.
Yeah.
It really should be.
It should. If it's going to be a valuable document, we have maybe you're going to challenge it to cut in half to 50 pages, but ultimately I think we can really capture some key visions and goals for the next 10 years and through these focus groups and then at the end of this process.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for this.
Anything else from the committee? Did we cover everything on the agenda today? I usually miss something, so what did I miss? Tell me.
I don't think
I
you
must
missed-
have missed something.
I don't think you missed anything.
It's the first time ever. Our next meeting is July 2nd. Supervisor Kinnear is going out of the country, the little brat. Where are you going?
Greece.
Oh, no, really? How's it going? What are you gonna do?
Oh, I don't know. My son kind of gave it the planning of it anyway.
Cool.
To,
Family
as a
trip?
gift. So my son and his wife and Becky and I are going to go.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Any announcements? Next meeting, July 2nd, and we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Tammy, I like how you kind of brought us back to what are we looking for? All those things you had listed up, we've been working on really hard. Water, housing, economic development.
Yeah.
Chris got all these people to